What is up, guys? John Claymore here, Gear Issue 33, and we're going to be looking at top 10 countries that are impossible to invade. Now, guys, we're going to be looking at this right from a different actual website. This is top 10 and not We Are Mighty. Now, guys, there is going to be some interruptions during the video, obviously, to kind of comment on the actual countries itself. Now, I will be leaving the link to the previous video that I did that you may not have caught, top 10 generals of all time according to math. I will be leaving that in the comment section. That as we're watching this, guys, make sure you guys are also commenting in the comment section. We'll get you guys have to say actually on this issue. And which one do you think is actually the most uninvadable country? Now, this one right here is brand new. I've not looked at this one yet. But before we start this, guys, make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe, cut on your notifications. Also, leave a comment in the comment section. Make sure you guys share these videos. And let's go ahead and take a look at this.
If there's one thing humans love, it's war. Over the last 3,400 years humans have been on Earth, 268 of them have been in peace. That's just 8% of recorded history. It's true, even though the world seems pretty at ease right now, there are conflicts going on all over the place. And every few years, countries do get invaded by other countries. The most recent was in 2018 when the UAE invaded Yemen. But are there any countries on the planet which are just impossible to invade? Well, the answer is yes, there are 10. For various reasons, it would be impossible to get into these 10 countries. And it's not always big countries with strong militaries. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to look at countries that are impossible to invade. Before we jump into it, why not invade the subscribe button and press the notification bell too? Coming up first is Bhutan. Bhutan is a tiny country in Southeast Asia, and it has pretty much nothing when it comes to defense. Their army's only 7,000 personnel, and their air force consists of just 2 aircrafts. They also have 0 tanks, but despite all of this, Bhutan is nearly impossible to invade. For thousands of years, no country has ever tried. You see, Bhutan is a tiny country surrounded by Himalayan peaks. The country itself is 300 meters above sea level, so if an enemy country wanted to invade, it would need to reach the border, which is hard to do. It would somehow need to get across all of these gigantic Himalayan peaks.
Now, guys, I had completely forgotten about Bhutan. Normally, when you think of that region, you're thinking about India, you're thinking about Nepal, you're thinking about Tibet, you're thinking about those nations there. And the thing about a country like Bhutan is, as you guys saw on the map, it's a country that would kind of be like a stepping stone or something that you might have to go through on the way to, like, say, invading India. Now, the Himalayas make things pretty freaking hard, but the thing about it is it's only a 7,000 man military, so I'm pretty sure a lot of countries that might try to invade, say someone like Russia or China, they would think these guys are pushovers, then to just find out a little bit later on that, hey, look, this terrain is kind of a nightmare, it's kind of a pain in the ass, so we might want to avoid this country altogether. But because the country is so obscure, I don't mean this as an insult to the people of Bhutan, but because it's so obscure, it oftentimes gets lost in the shuffle of things, if you guys are kind of picking up on what I'm saying.
And even when they got there, they would have incredible altitude sickness. The people of Bhutan are acclimatized to this, so they don't feel any sickness. But if you suddenly soared to that height, then you would. You would feel absolutely exhausted and sick too. All of an enemy country's resources would be spent actually trying to get to the country. Also, Bhutan is fairly insignificant when it comes to international geopolitics. They're very self-sufficient and they love peace. They're incredibly isolated physically and politically.
Once again, another people that, quite frankly, you just don't want to touch or just don't want to screw around with. It's just, they don't really do anything to upset people. Like I said, it's kind of an obscure country, but it's just one more thing that you just don't want to touch.
Korea. You hear rumblings about North Korea all the time. They are currently developing nuclear missiles, and they also don't have a central banking system. Some argue this makes them a prime target for an invasion, but despite it being a small and poor country, it would be nearly impossible to invade. You see, despite the size of the country, it is the 4th largest military in the world. This is behind China, India, and the USA. They have 1.28 million active military personnel, and they've also got 4.5 million in reserves. They are equipped with 4,200 tanks, 500 fighter planes, nearly 1,000 battleships, and so far 8 nuclear warheads.
Okay, really quick. I'm not saying this to put North Korea down, but you can look at North Korea's training footage, and I'm not seeing a military that's quite impressive. It's just not an impressive force at all. Also, a lot of their weapons are just old. Now, it does not mean that old weapons aren't effective. I mean, I think our old World War II stock weapons like M1 Garands, M1 carbines, I think 30 carbine rifles are a little bit more, let's just say, I would take them over anything that comes out of North Korea. But at the same time, though, it's not just the poorly equipped troops. It's not just the fact that they just put this heavy emphasis on how well trained they are, when in reality, they're really not that well trained. There's several videos out there. I may leave a couple in the actual description box of this video here. But the thing to me that would make North Korea hard to invade is the fact that China is next door. And if you remember the Korean War, when we went and we invaded South Korea to liberate it, we eventually took the fight into North Korea itself. The problem that we had is that China threw their entire force and they kind of overwhelmed us. Now, the kill ratio was much, much higher. We were slaughtering their men at a ridiculous rate. But still, at the same time, though, it's still a lot to overcome. Now, I think a military that's very, very well equipped, very, very well armed could probably handle this task. So I'm not too sure North Korea should be ranked number 9. But then at the same time, though, if you've got the Chinese dragon sitting next door, it could be a problem. Also, there's also heavy mud flap in South Korea, and there's probably heavy mud flap in North Korea too, making amphibious landing kind of a problem.
These nukes are enough to scare off even the most powerful of countries. In the 1950s, during the Korean War, South Korea and the USA teamed up to try and subdue North Korea. But even back then, with South Korea and the USA teaming up, they couldn't do it. Not only that, North Korea has a great friendship with China. The USA would never want to spoil their relationship with China, so they would never invade North Korea.
We don't have a good relationship with China. They tell you that we do, and we'll probably make another video on that right there. I'm not going to get too much into actually disputing that at this moment, but at the same time, though, we'll probably do more videos in the future on USA and China.
Australia is not the biggest country when it comes to population, but one of Australia's biggest defences from invaders is its geography. Australia is an island, and 70% of it is uninhabitable outback. This is a gigantic stretch of desert. This would make it very hard for an enemy army to acclimatise. Its nearest potential enemy is Japan, but even that is 11,000 kilometres away, and forces would need to...
Wait a minute, last I checked, Japan and Australia were like on the same team. Alright, something else about Australia. If 70% of it is uninhabitable, then why in the world would you go into the uninhabitable land? I think if anything, if you were to invade Australia, you might want to take the cities and the coast and just leave it right where it is. I mean, at the end of the day, the ports is all that matters anyways. You just want to subdue the outback lands where nobody is actually there. So I'm not seeing where Australia is not that, let's just say, uninvadable. So I'm a little bit curious about this one. If I'm missing something, guys, make sure you guys leave it in the comment section. Let's keep going.
Across the Pacific Ocean to invade. Japan nearly did invade Australia during World War II, but once they realised how difficult it would be, they stopped. By the time they got into the country and had crossed the outback, these soldiers would be so weak and subdued. This would mean it would be easy for the Australian military to take them out. United States.
Okay, I gotta call BS on this one right here. I think the United States should be number 1. I mean, let's face it, we've got over 90 million gun owners, and everywhere you go in this country, it's there's a lot of very, very hard passes to get across. I would have the United States at number 1. There's a reason why nobody actually wants to try it, especially with our military-industrial complex, our Navy, our apparatus, and of course the distancing, the geography. But we'll come back to this one at the end of this video because I'm pretty sure it's going to come back up at a later date, especially if we do another list, which is probably going to be through We Are Mighty. But let's keep it going.
The United States has the 3rd biggest active personnel behind China and India. The USA have been major players in wars, for example, World War I and World War II, and they've also been a part of recent invasions, for example, in Iraq and Afghanistan. They also have the largest military budget of any country in the world. That is nearly $750 billion a year. Not only that, in the USA, many citizens possess weapons. There are 112 guns in the USA per every 100 person. That's way more guns than people. This means that if anyone tried to invade, citizens may be able to fight them back. The USA is also gigantic. There are many different terrains, for example, deserts and also rocky mountains. It's also separated from other superpower countries by gigantic oceans. For example, the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. Switzerland. Switzerland is known as the most peaceful country in the world. They were one of the only countries in Europe to stay out of World War I and World War II.
Now, Switzerland would definitely be in the top 10 in my opinion. I mean, like, they would definitely be in the top 10. Everybody in Switzerland, every military-aged man serves in the military, and everybody carries a weapon. Also, something else about Switzerland, the government actually issues out weapons. Now, the United States, of course, we have the Second Amendment, and we can basically buy whatever we want. Of course, you know, libs and rhinos stop passing terrible gun laws, which, by the way, are all completely unconstitutional. But the thing about Switzerland is that everyone is actually armed, and it's a Central European country with a lot of hills, a lot of mountains, a lot of very tough passes to go through. I don't think it's less invadable than the United States, but it's definitely a country that you might want to think twice about invading over.
But despite this, it's one of the most powerful countries in the world. Superpowers like the UK, the USA, France and Germany all have a lot of money stored in Swiss banks. So if they tried to invade Switzerland, Switzerland could simply take all of their money. Switzerland's geography is also great for defense. They have alpine mountains surrounding the country. They also have 24/7 army surveillance of these mountains from hidden bunkers inside them. And the Swiss army is so good, they're even trusted to protect the Pope. Russia. Russia is the...
Okay, you might would think that I'd have Russia like at number 2, and don't worry, I'll come back and probably rank them all towards the end. But the thing about Russia is this: where as almost as uninvadable as it has been invaded. We'll come back to this in a second.
Largest country on Earth, and this is a great defense for invaders. One of the main reasons why Germany lost World War II was because they could not conquer Russia. All of the German soldiers simply froze in the cold climate of Russia. By the time any invaders actually got into Russia, they would be easy to subdue. That's because they would have wasted so many men and resources simply getting into the country. Russia also has nearly 1 million active personnel. They have 3,500 military aircraft, and the most nukes out of any other country, 7,000 missiles. You can see why no one wants to go up against that.
Now, really quick, of those Russian nuclear missiles, what they're not telling you is about 2/3 to 3/4 of them are defensive in nature. They're not that powerful nukes. They're still nukes, of course. They can still take out cities, but they're mostly defensive in nature and typically not as accurate. The thing about Russia is this way: when we think about Russia, we think about its land, we think about its actual climate. It's got like 12 different time zones. Don't worry, we're coming back to this right in another video, probably one day next week or the week after. But the thing about Russia is this right here. Russia is a very, very fervent people. If you go in there, you're going to be facing the traditions of World War II. You're going to be facing traditions, all the stories handed down from the Napoleonic Wars. And not to mention, people in Russia are actually allowed to be armed. We may be doing a video on that at a later date. They can't just go and buy a weapon like we do here, but they are allowed to own firearms. I think they're allowed to own a shotgun. If they got to pass a background check, if they get through a year and a half of that, they can then own a hunting rifle, and I think they can own a pistol after that. They have like a stringent, very strict system on it. But the thing about Russia is that it has actually been invaded. It's been invaded multiple times. The Swedes invaded, the Lithuanians invaded. Who else? Obviously, Adolf Hitler invaded. If you want to count the, I'm not going to count the 1853 war. Yeah, name just kind of slipped my mind. It seriously just did. The Crimean War, and of course Napoleon has invaded. Well, each and every invasion, the war always went to shit because there was a lot of errors made. Now, it seems to me like Russia, the thing that always keeps it alive is the timing of an actual invasion. But still at the same time, though, Russia is not a country you want to invade. So let's keep this going.
United Kingdom. One European country which did not get invaded in World War II was the UK. This is...
Okay, really quick. The United Kingdom did not get invaded because Adolf Hitler actually explained on several occasions that he would prefer to have England as let's just say he would prefer to have them as a partner in commerce. He wanted to defeat the British Army, and of course the Brits were able to win because the Germans didn't even have radar at the time of the Battle of Britain. They were successful in holding them off, but England is not exactly an uninvadable nation. I just don't think anybody's actually tried, at least not since the days of, I think, Norman the Conqueror. But it was conquered. So I want to go ahead and call bullshit on this one. I'll come back to this towards the end of the video.
Because it's an island, which is hard to invade. Also, despite being so small, the UK is incredibly powerful on the world stage. It's a superpower like the USA, Russia, or Germany.
No, it's not a superpower. We have to give it all kinds of money and materials. England is not a superpower.
The only way you could invade is by a naval invasion through the English Channel. You'd have to go through the treacherous waters and then get up the white cliffs of Dover. Even Germany in World War II could not do that. The UK also has 150,000 active military personnel, and they spend 55 billion on defence every year. The UK also has a, quote, special relationship with the USA thanks to the NATO agreement.
Yeah, thanks for just making my point about England getting a lot of money.
Means if anyone was to invade Britain, then NATO would come and help out. India. India is one of the largest countries in the world, and they also have the second largest active personnel. That is 1.5 million people. India also has a massive military might. It has 2,000 aircrafts and over 600 helicopters. They have 6,000 tanks and 7,000 armoured fighting vehicles. They also have 14 submarines and 2 aircraft carriers. India also has a great relationship with China. This means if any country...
Nah, it does not have a great relationship with China. This record must actually be an old top 10. I can't think of a... I'm not really hearing a lot of truth here. Also, something else too. China did invade India. I want to say it was back in 2020. It was more of a probing operation. But if you got past the Punjab and if you got past the Himalayas, which by the way is a pain in the ass, India could be invaded. Now, whether it's holdable or not, that rather is a completely different question. But I do think India could be invaded. It would be a pain in the ass, but I do think it could actually be hit.
For example, Pakistan tried to invade, they likely couldn't. That's because China, which is right above India, would probably help out. China. Let's look at the largest country in the world when it comes to population. China have the most active
largest population, all living under lockdown. Guys, really quick, let's go back to Russia just for a second. One of the main things that was pointed out during the evaluation post-mortem of Operation Barbarossa is if the Germans had gone in as a liberator, they might have been able to get a lot of disaffected people to join their cause, and it might have actually helped turn the war against. Now, China has got some of the same problems, okay? So let's just say you invade Korea. Let's say you break through North Korea and you're able to go on the offensive and you're able to beat the Chinese back. Is it impossible to say that if you bust through that little strait right there in North Korea, if you bust through that little border, is it impossible to think that maybe some of the people might turn and that area of China alone, especially with Japan and with Taiwan and every other nation coming in, is it possible that maybe China could be invaded? You see, I'm thinking that China is a lot more invadable than you might would think. But let's keep this going.
With over 2 million people. It's also an incredibly large country, which would be hard to get into. China have around 3,000 military aircraft and 800 helicopters. They also have more tanks than almost anyone, 9,500. They have 5,000 armored fighting vehicles, and also 68 submarines and 1 aircraft carrier.
The United States has got 11 super carriers. We've probably got about 11 to 15 more carriers in reserve that we could pull out if needs be. 1 aircraft carrier. I'm not seeing a way to actually repel an invasion here. The only thing that's actually helping China out is its distance. It's only got 1 coastline versus, say, the United States, who's got 2. Hell, England has got multiple coastlines. I'm not seeing where China would be in that top 3 or that top 4 actually in the count. But if anything, I don't think they make the top 10. But
Japan. Japan is an island nation which is hard to invade. They also have 250,000 people in their active personnel. They've got 800 tanks, 300 air fighters, and 750 helicopters.
Really quick, we just found out with Shinzo Abe, or at least I found out, I always suspected after the assassination of Abe, that Japan is a country they have full gun control. China is a country with full gun control. Russia is a country that does not have gun control. England is a country that has gun control. Right then and there, you have about 3 and maybe 5 or 6 nations in which the civilians are not carrying firearms or weapons and can't defend themselves. That right there, I understand distance is a reason why you might not would invade, but at the same time, if you did, if the civilian populace is not as armed, it might serve to be a problem for the people to actually defend themselves. I'm not buying this list. We'll wrap it up here in a second, though, guys.
Also, being an island nation, they have a big naval strength. This includes 17 submarines and 4 aircraft carriers. Their annual defense budget is around $50 billion.
By the way, guys, That's all American personnel right there. That's the United States Marine Corps Amtrak. Those are Marines right there. I can tell by the camis. And even though that right there appears to be maybe 29 Palms, California, or somewhere in the Middle East, Japan has to rely primarily on us.
That is the 6th highest in the entire world. They're also known for being incredibly tough. During the USA, America was so scared of Japan they had to drop 2 nuclear bombs on the country. That is because the word surrender is not within the Japanese soldiers' vocabulary.
Now, there is some partial truth to that. If you look at World War II statistics, you won't see much as far as... let me get this off real quick.
Now it's time to...
What would happen is that you would probably... Let's just say that... the issue that they had is that the distance that they didn't want to anger the civilian populace against, because they didn't plan on going in as liberators. So we dropped 2 nukes. Anyways, there's a lot more to go with that. But the actual battlefield data between the battles in the Pacific, Japanese didn't really have a whole lot of wounded. They, for the most part, lived by their Bushido code, and they would have much rather died than taken surrender. So there is some truth in that, in that right there.
Your voice heard. Which country do you think is the most powerful on this list? If you want some more amazing videos, then check it.
Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop this portion of the video here and just kind of give you my thoughts. If I had to do the ranking, I would have had the United States at number 1. England more than likely would not have even made the top 10. Neither would have China. India would have been there in the top 10. Tibet would have been in the top 10. Bangladesh. As a matter of fact, that entire area in the Himalayas would have been in the top 10. It would have found a way in there, including Afghanistan. Russia probably would have been in the top 5. The thing about Russia is that people have actually invaded Russia. The United States has not been invaded since the War of 1812. But in the case of Russia, the problem that people have with Russia is they can't never hold it. They always attack it at the wrong time. But no, I don't think that this list right here was completely accurate. Like I said, if I had to rank it, I probably would have had the United States at number 1. I probably had Russia at like 2 or 3. I'd have had India definitely in the top 10. England, I don't think I'd have had in the top 10. Switzerland, and of course I would include in most of the Himalayan nations. As far as North Korea is concerned, I don't think North Korea is that invadable of a country. It's just you have a problem with mud flaps, so it could become an issue. But if you were able to break across the 38th parallel, you could probably drop troops in that area, and you probably wouldn't need to worry about an actual naval invasion. But guys, that's all I got for you on this one right here. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys share this video. Make sure you guys hit that hit the notifications bell. Cut on the notifications itself. And I'm going to be probably doing the next video. It's probably going to be on, let's see, it's either going to be another one of these, or it could be the infographics USA versus Russia. With that out of the way, guys, I'll see you guys later.